underdogs, underestimated, we the ones.
Welcome back to the Underdogs. I'm Jordan Brenner. Hello, Peter Keating.
Hey, Jordan, how's it going?
Oh, it's lovely because this is the underdoggiest week of the sports calendar. That's right.
Wait,
Nothing's
Jordan. I thought last week with literal hot dogs was the doggiest week of the sports calendar.
That was the dog days of summer. This is the underdog week because nothing's happening. It's the All-Star break in baseball. Football training camp hasn't started. You got a little NBA Summer League, but fear not. Peter and I have worked away for the past week finding interesting things to discuss. Regardless, a little later we're going to jump into a couple NBA underdog topics, our favorite under-the-radar moves of the offseason, and the new play-in tournament. But first, the best underdog story in baseball right now isn't being reported enough, and that is Luis Arraez of the Miami Marlins' quest to hit 400 at a time when batting average has been de-emphasized to the point of almost being unimportant. It is cool. It's not being talked about enough. And we have the best baseball researcher in the biz, Peter Keating, to tell you how incredible what he's doing is.
Jordan, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. This is a guy. Count the number of ways this guy is the ultimate underdog in a game and in a world where everybody's getting bulked up faster, stronger, taller, bigger at the same time. He's 5'9", maybe 175 pounds. In a world where people are breaking contract records all the time. He was a batting champion who got traded. Now, he's traded for Pablo Lopez, who's an all-star, fine, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of the reaction at the time was that the Marlins lost the trade by trading for Arraez. And here he is hitting over 380, less than a year later. And in a world where everything is about, we're living in a StatCast world, Jordan. Everything's about elevating the launch angle, hitting more fly balls, get balls over the wall, avoid double plays at all costs. This is the premier contact hitter of our generation, maybe of the past 4 or 5 generations. I'll give you one stat to start you off, Jordan. Mm-hmm. Luis Arraez is swinging, when he swings at pitches outside the strike zone, he makes contact 93.6% of the time. That's on balls
That's amazing.
Outside the strike zone. He hasn't struck out twice in a game yet this season. He hasn't struck out 3 times in a game his entire career. So just start with that. This guy puts the bat on the ball. I know a lot of people say that about a lot of players, but look, we're talking the day after the All-Star game. He had 2 at-bats in the All-Star game, okay? Against very different pitches, different speeds, different locations. He laid the bat on the ball twice, got 2 hits. He's batting 1,000 for his life now in the All-Star game, and he drove in the game-tying run. This is what he does. What's so amazing to me about some statistics is how they can show you what's happening in real life. What this guy is doing is leaving his bat close to the strike zone, right? He's doing like half a swing before the ball gets anywhere. He's not gearing up and swinging away and like pounding the ball. He's actually moving his bat within the zone with enough dexterity and enough quickness to aim the ball when he hits it. I haven't seen anyone do that.
The Yankees, aren't hitting well, and they just fired their hitting coach. And watching you demonstrate those swing mechanics, there,
well, I'm sorry.
Are you up for a career change?
There we go. No, I'm better lefty.
It's like when George Costanza was showing Bernie Williams how to hit Danny Tartabull in the batting cage.
I got my Oscar Gamble going if I go lefty. So
all right, so let me ask you a couple questions because I want to attack this from a couple of different angles. First, Arraez is down to 383. Mm-hmm. He was really flirting with 400 from a good part of the season. Where is that in terms of historical numbers at the All-Star break, and what is it even remotely possible for him to be even better in the second half and actually hit 400? And we've actually asked our friends at DraftKings to come up with a line on either an over/under batting average or will he hit 400. They're not there yet, but we're hopeful. I think that would be a really fun thing to put a couple bucks on. But Peter, if you had to bet on that, where do you think he'll finish? And what are the chances of actually breaking the 400 barrier, which obviously we know hasn't been done since Ted Williams?
All right, I have some bad news, but it's not really bad, and I'll tell you why. He's almost certainly not going to hit 400. here's why the news isn't that bad. Right now, the National League as a whole is hitting 250. Now, over the 140-something years we've had organized baseball, the average league batting average has usually been between 260 and 270. Pretty steady for a long, long, long time, but sometimes it goes way up, sometimes it goes way down. Right now, we're in a downswing. There's so many strikeouts in this game. The whole league's hitting 250. So Arraez right now hitting 383. That's 53% above league average, okay? When
So what does that mean historically? Yeah.
Well, when Ted Williams hit 401, right, back in 1941, right? The last guy hit 406, sorry. The last guy hit 400. He was 51% above league average. On a relative basis, Arraez batting average is even better. When Bill Terry, the last guy in the National League to hit 400, he hit 400 in 1930. Jordan, the entire league hit 300 that year. He was only 32% above the league average. So Arraez has he's competing for the highest relative batting average of all time. The only guy up above 50% more than a couple of times is Ty Cobb, 110 years ago. And Arraez is right there with him. But Jordan, it gets better than that, because the key thing, if there's one thing I could tell people about all of statistics in the whole world, it would be this. Over time, in a league that's growing, right, in a sport that's popular, the difference between the league leader and the league average shrinks over time. What that means is that players don't look as great, but what it really means is that the overall level of play is improving. Nobody's going to score 100 points in an NBA game like Will Chamberlain did.
Right, exactly. That's exactly what I think about. That's a perfect example, yep.
Everybody is better, including the defenders, right? As the pitchers and batters and fielders all get better over time, the extent to which anyone can exceed the league average tends to decline. Now, there are things that can jackhammer that relationship. Barry Bonds, for example, was better at hitting home runs than anyone compared to the league since Babe Ruth. He was a great player. He was aided by the best science, the best science money could.
Oh,
the best
wow.
science. He was a kind of a perfect storm, a Hall of Fame level player who had a bonus of the best science money could buy. Right, so he kind of opened up that, but in general, right, this relationship goes down. So there hasn't been a player who's been 40% better than the league since Barry Bonds. Chipper Jones was flirting with 400 for a while in 2008. He ended up around 40%. There hasn't been a player anywhere close to what Arraez is doing since at least 2000.
I think we could talk about this forever, too, and as well as the implications of what it means to be a singles hitter in today's three true outcomes game, and whether this is actually an effective way to play, to win, if he can change some paradigms. But, we only have a couple minutes left before I want to change the subject to basketball, which is a superior sport. So real quick, do you think there's something to what Arraez is doing that might make this a more viable hitting approach for other guys in this era? And again, is there anything that, would enable him to actually, if not hit 400, break the non-400 mark?
I do think
which is
people.
what again?
I do think once somebody succeeds at something, other folks try to copy it, right? And I do think if you look at everyone who's been within 10 points of where Arraez is right now, they've averaged 360 at the end of the season. 360 is something that might happen once in every few years. It'd be a better batting champion than anything we've seen in a decade or two. But that's where I think he's going to land. Here's the deal. You can't have a 360 hitter who doesn't help your team a lot. 360 hitter, even one who doesn't walk a lot, gets on base, will drive in runs, because he's at least going to have like a 360 average runners in scoring position, right? So I do think people will try. The question is, can they succeed? Can you pull what Ichiro did, what Arraez is doing? Can you wait that long to attack the ball and still have success? What it takes is a willingness to spray line drives all across the field. You can't be too much of a pull hitter. You can't be too much of an opposite field hitter, and you have to hit line drives. It's not going to be easy, but you could see a player like maybe Bo Bichette try to add more average to his game, right? A guy who hits the ball everywhere, who's having a good season, who's a great contact hitter, who right now is hitting the ball into the ground a lot. At his best, DJ LeMahieu was not that different from this. There are types. To find somebody who's doing it this well, Jordan, I advise everybody to go back and look in their baseball encyclopedias to Luke Appling in 1936. He's the last middle infielder who hit above
Didn't you go to
380.
high school with him, Peter?
Jordan, if you look up senior citizen home run old timers game, you'll see Luke Appling hitting an old timers day home run at the age of 75. That's how long he lasted. Let's hope Arraez goes that long.
Yeah, I could really see Josh Donaldson following in his footsteps along these lines. But
you picked a player who's probably the most opposite to Arraez in the game, right? So yeah.
If I never have to see, and I think producer Sarah would agree, if we never have to see Josh Donaldson play another game for the Yankees, it would be too soon. But you mentioned Luis Arraez was an under the radar underdog offseason acquisition from baseball. We're going to get into his basketball counterparts after this.
And we're back with Underdogs, and we're here to talk about some of the great underdog moves that have been happening in the NBA offseason so far. Jordan, this is what you spend most of your nights looking at, reading about, talking about, and you would even if we didn't have this show. So let me ask you, what are your favorite beneath-the-radar moves so far in the NBA offseason?
I'm insulted because anyone who knows me knows I really spend my nights strategizing at Little League Baseball, but...
But the season's over, true. Jordan. Come on. We're on to basketball.
One of these days, I'm going to tell you how it ended. It was the most tragic loss, but we'll get into that.
Well, let me start off with this. I happen to be driving in a car, stuck in traffic for more than 6 hours the day after the Bradley Beal deal. Okay. The sharp consensus seemed to be that Phoenix had loaded up on superstars. It was going to have a hard time finding anybody even replacement level to play around them. They were going to have a really tough time filling out their roster. I take it you think things have worked out pretty good for the Suns?
Well, I think it worked out better than anyone could have anticipated for two teams, the Suns and the Lakers. So let's take the Suns first. Their bargain shopping was fantastic. Okay, so these are all players they got for fewer than $3.5 million. Eric Gordon, Keita Bates-Diop, Drew Eubanks, Chimezie Metu, and Yuta Watanabe, okay? It is shrewd beyond shrewd that they were able to get those guys on those deals. They were probably the best collection of 5 players you could find who were available at that price, and they fill needs. The one who's most interesting to me is Watanabe. He shot 45.7% on catch and shoot threes last year, and that's what this offense with Durant and Beal and Booker is going to generate. You just need DeAndre Ayton's going to be diving to the rim, so you need a fourth guy who can stand out there and hit open shots. He can do that. All of these guys bring something to the table, whether it's Keita Bates-Diop, his versatility at the 3 and the 4. Eubanks is a good backup center, so I'm super impressed with the Suns. Similar.
Wait, Jordan, let me ask you really quick. Because,
Yeah.
Even we have access to these analytics, right? People know what these guys can do. How are they available that cheap? Is there that big a discount for players signing with championship-level teams? Is it shrewd management? You think they had these players in mind even before they made the Beal transaction? How does this happen?
I don't know whether they were chasing them before the Beal move, but, it's ring chasing is hardly a new phenomenon, and you're probably getting guys who might be willing to take a little bit less money to come to play with 3 stars. But the other thing is some of these guys, honestly, I'm not sure what other offers like a Yuta Watanabe got elsewhere. It's just he's such a good fit there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it makes me wonder about teams that were a little less frugal and maybe not as smart with their money.
Well, let me talk about the Lakers, too, because they did something similar. First of all, we talked during the playoffs about what the Lakers did during the season is almost unprecedented in the way they remade their roster on the fly and succeeded. So now, first of all, they have the benefit this coming season of some actual stability in that core. So that's the first thing that's why they should be better. And then I really liked some of their lesser moves. They were able to pay Gabe Vincent, $10 million a year to replace Dennis Schroeder, and I think it's probably an upgrade. But then the other moves they made were all, again, sort of in the bargain range. They got Taurean Prince from Minnesota for about $4.5 million. Jackson Hayes, a rim-running, rim-protecting, athletic backup center for just over $2 million. Cam Reddish, the lottery ticket continues for him. Maybe they'll unlock something in him. So those moves, again, they built a real bench. Obviously, they re-signed Austin Reeves on a good deal. They gave Rui Hachimura a lot of money to stay. So they've really supplemented a team that was for a while just so top heavy around LeBron James and Anthony Davis that to me, the funny thing is now the biggest question for them is whether AD and LeBron can stay healthy and keep producing at their level, because I think they have the right supporting players around them now.
Can
Isn't that
LeBron
interesting?
get the minutes he needs to be a contender? Of course, with them, it's not just ring chasing. It's the chance to play with LeBron James in his last, whatever what might be his last few years too, right?
Well, for sure. And it's also a short-term bet on yourself that, okay, I'm going to go to a really good team. I'm going to play a rotation role. You know, there wasn't a ton of, like, Jackson Hayes, again, like, I don't know how much the market was there for him, but if he's suddenly giving them 15, 20 minutes a game off the bench and finishing and blocking shots, then, like, that could lead to a much bigger offer from his next team that sees that and sort of vault his career forward. So
well, I like these.
that's
I
my-
haven't
yeah.
seen the betting lines move that much, but I, as a fan, and as a better, I would love to see a team go out, get as many superstars as possible, and then actually manage to put around them players who are fun to watch, who have distinct roles. Those sound like rootable teams to me.
Right. Well, you mentioned betting. So my second favorite underdog move. You want a bet for this season? You want something you can make right now?
Let's hear it.
The Indiana Pacers, their over under for wins right now at DraftKings is only 35.5, which they basically achieved last year. And I really like the moves they've made with their roster. Tyrese Halliburton is a star at point guard, and I really like what they did to help him out. They drafted Jarris Walker. They traded for Obi Toppin, who
Obi Toppin's worth at least half a game by himself.
going to be an awesome lob threat in transition. And the
Yes.
Bruce Brown move was such an interesting move from Denver. They overpaid him, but it's a short-term salary. So it basically, in essence, creates a trade exemption because there's a team option for year 2. And just from, we can discuss another time sort of the implications of a contract like that and what it says about where the league is right now.
But essentially, they gave him more money this year, have a team option for year 2.
Because they had the
it.
cap space.
Yeah.
Better to do it 1 year and overpay a guy than to spread it out on long-term deals for guys who aren't that good. And by the way, Bruce Brown can play, so he's going to make them better as well. So I really like that team. I think the East has taken a bit of a step back. The West is loaded again in terms of like not like super teams, but like teams that could all win 50 games. It's going to be a bloodbath for the last couple playoff spots in the West.
I want to ask you one. Wait, let me ask you one random question about that. My pick from last year, the Minnesota Timberwolves, fallen completely off the radar. Injury destroyed their season. Do you see them as a 50-game contender, or are they off the radar?
No.
So they're down. They're out. Their old plan. Their plan is basically trashed, right?
I think the Gobert Towns pairing doesn't work. It's clearly becoming Anthony Edwards' team. The biggest thing, though, quite frankly, is I just think, like I said, there's so many good teams in the West that I only think a couple will win north of 50, and they're not, to me, one of the top 5-6 teams anyway. I don't even know if they're a playoff team.
It's just a sad update for me. That's all.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. But no, I think if you're looking for a team to vault, I think the Pacers have an opportunity in the East. And then this team didn't make as many moves, but I think they're sneaky to grow together, and that's the Orlando Magic. They've got a young core: Paulo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Wendell Carter Jr., and then if Jonathan Isaac gets healthy, if Markelle Fultz gets healthy and develops, Jalen Suggs is still there, Cole Anthony. They drafted Anthony Black. Like, this team isn't far from these young guys coming together and being super competitive, so I'd watch out. So underrated moves by the Pacers. Definitely love sort of a lot can change, but I think their win total right now is projected to be low enough that there's some value there. So those are sort of my under the radar teams that could move up in the standings. And I have one other crazy underdog for you.
I can't wait. It's not the Knicks, is it?
Sadly, no. Although I was looking at their number, and it's not terrible. Like, I think it was like 44.
Yeah, they also strike me as the kind of team that does well whenever I depend on other teams with nuclei of core young players to come together quickly. That can happen over a long time or just misfire completely in NBA, while the same kind of B-plus teams keep chugging out 45 or 48 wins, They feel like they're in that range. But that's not what you're talking about. What are you talking about?
Oh, I've saved a special one for you for last, okay?
I got my wallet open.
One of the first and strangest and still not really fully digested moves of the offseason was the Warriors shipping Jordan Poole out and bringing in an old Chris Paul who spent years trying to beat them and failing, okay? So people are still trying to figure out how this works. Can he play with Steph and Clay? So here's the underdog aspect to it all, okay? You think of Chris Paul as this fantastic point guard running the show,
distributor of a great one of all time.
High pick and roll, distributor, forcing mismatches, switches, pulling up for mid-range jumpers. You know what Chris Paul has become as well at a really high level? A spot-up shooter. Last year, he shot 52% on catch-and-shoot three-pointers, okay?
You don't mean the people he passed the ball to shot 52%.
No.
You mean he himself shot 52%? Because I would have, you're right, and I'm glad I didn't have my wallet open. I would have not bet on that. I would have bet against that all day long. That's amazing.
Chris Paul as a floor spacer is the underrated angle to this whole move. So, look, I think it's really cool in two ways, right? First of all, it enables you to load manage both him and then the Steph Clay backcourt because you can play Chris Paul 35 minutes one game and give one of those guys a rest and rest him the next game. It gives you lots of flexibility in the regular season to also try and keep those guys healthy for the playoffs. But then second, the question is, right, can you play them all together? And I think the fact that he shoots so well on these catch and shoots makes it much more viable. If the ball is going to be in Steph's hands, for him, at least offensively, defensively, they're going to have issues.
Steph's hands. I'm taking the over on Draymond Green's assists. If this statistic holds up, I mean, you don't even have to play them all at the same time. That's amazing. That's cool.
Right. So the Warriors will be fun.
Well, that's good excavating, Mr. Brenner. That's good job. I would never have guessed that stat. That's excellent.
This is why you pay me so much money, Peter, to find nuggets like that. All right, so Peter, real quick, the NBA has announced its new in-season cup tournament. It is a decided underdog if you look at public reaction to it. Look, it's modeled after
Is that a way of saying everybody hates it, Jordan, so it's an underdog?
Seems that way. It's modeled after European competitions, particularly in soccer, where teams are competing for multiple things at the same time, a league championship and an in-season tournament. Real quick, the format is such they made 6 groups. Each group, which is they're done by conference, they'll play 4 games, groups of 5, right? So 4 regular games. Top 8 teams advance to a knockout round. These count as regular season games, except the final game, the 2 finalists, that's an 83rd game. It doesn't count. Otherwise, everybody else is playing regular season games as part of this tournament. The winning team, I think, gets $500,000 each. The second place team, $200,000.
Is that the whole team gets $500,000?
No, each player.
Each player. Okay, I want to clarify that.
So there is a financial incentive.
So it's worth $500,000 to the players on the winning teams.
Right, and for a guy on a rookie contract or a two-way or whatever, that's a lot of money.
I do not like the idea that regular season games which count towards your playoff standing, can be messed with in this way. I don't even like that ties can be worth a different number of points in the NHL than wins or losses. Why is that? Teams are playing to get into the play-in. Why do they which is smart. Why are they supposed to or going to or want to play differently for other incentives for other games?
So I have sort of a lukewarm take on this, which is that there's really not a lot of downside to it. There's no downside to making a few of these games more high profile, okay? I just don't think anyone's going to care about the upside. So the difference between this and what's happening in Europe is there's tradition there. I think it's weird, as you said, to sort of say, well, certain regular season games now matter more than others, which is basically what this cup is. But in terms of load management and stuff, okay, so most guys they're not missing multiple games a week. So fine, this is the game they'll play in, and they'll load manage the next game.
I think all of us in analytics need to do a better job showing why tanking is not a good idea, which it is not, in order to change the incentives for a team like Dallas to not tank like they did last year. I think all of these other things are tinkering on the margins. I think we want to make late season games more meaningful, get teams to stop tanking by showing how destructive it is.
All right, well, let's table this for now and get back into it come November when this tournament starts. By then, maybe we're filling out a bracket. We've got giant killers for the NBA in-season tournament. But until then, this tournament is a decided underdog, and so are we. And we'll see you next week.